Hey everyone, Joey here, and I played a preview build of Pacific Drive, the upcoming survival game where you drive a car around a closed-off area of the Pacific Northwest that's filled with all kinds of strange environmental and scientific anomalies that were kept under wraps by the government. A very exciting concept indeed, and I've been keeping my eyes on this game ever since it was announced about a year and a half ago through a PlayStation State of Play. I even watched a hands-off preview of the game a few months back, but now I have finally gotten hands-on time with it, and I can say there are some things I like about the game and some things I don't like as much. But let's get right into it. You play as an unnamed silent protagonist who finds himself in the Olympic exclusion zone in the year 1998. It's a place filled with unusual anomalies after government testing, and even though there's hints about what happened here, the game never really outright tells you from the beginning what exactly happened in the Olympic exclusion zone, so those revelations are uncovered through various notes you'll find throughout the game world. Whether or not we'll outright know what happened here remains to be seen, since I only played the first 3.5 hours of this game, but I will say it's very intriguing how this story is told. There are characters that speak to you through the radio that tell you about the goings-on in this place. Even still, the story is not the main focus of Pacific Drive. It is that sweet survival gameplay, and it's as realistic as it comes. Meaning driving the car is not as simple as just getting in it. You have to open the door to get in, you have to start the engine, you have to turn off the parking brake. If there's rain, you gotta turn the windshield wipers on. If it's dark, you gotta turn on those headlights. You can use the mirrors to look behind you. It all makes sense. And there were so many times I accidentally left the vehicle without turning it off or putting on the parking brake, so it would just roll away from me. I kept thinking I was playing Far Cry when in reality I was not. And this being a survival game, you will find a multitude of resources from scrap metal to chemicals that you will use to craft items that will mostly benefit your car, such as doors, bumpers, frames, headlights, you know, the typical stuff you find on cars. While you could craft and repair your car out in the field with all the hazards flying around, you will be returning to your garage often to make these repairs, and it is a much safer place. This is one of the first things I did when the demo started, and I was already obsessed with it. There's always something I love about taking something dirty or broken and putting it back together again. It's just incredibly satisfying, especially with this repair putty. Look at that. Why can't this be a real thing? I would love that. And while the game is an open world, it does give you a map filled with certain sections of the zone that you can drive to from your garage. They're their own individual section with their own sets of hazards, such as these UFO-like machines that will grab your car with some kind of suction device. There are also these weird metallic balls that will attach to your car and start fiddling with its devices, doing things you don't want it to do. And that's not even mentioning the numerous environmental hazards like radiation pockets, pieces of ground that will just lift up out of nowhere, and gravitational anomalies that will just send you flying. There were some story objectives in this preview, such as bringing back an antenna to access more of the zone, but I really spent a lot more time just exploring these areas. I found abandoned houses with resources in them, as well as notes that tell you more about the people who used to live here, and in my 3.5 hours of playing, it was a pretty consistent loop of going back to the garage, fixing my vehicle, going back out into the zone, finding more resources, getting banged up in the process, going back to the garage, fixing my car again, rinse and repeat. I didn't really get any major car upgrades during my short time with the game, so a lot of my time in the garage was spent just fixing the parts that I already had. The question though is that while this loop is consistent, is it fun for survival fans? Is it a satisfying gameplay loop to the point where I actually feel like I'm progressing in the game, and not just because the story is progressing, but because I, the player, am getting more powerful thanks to better car parts and the like? I have to say that even though I like what this game is going for, I very much appreciate its unique car-themed survival concept. I came across a few things in this preview that left me a bit concerned, and will hopefully be fixed and or slightly tweaked in the final release of the game next month. The first issue I had was through its communication, as there were times where I didn't know what the game wanted me to do exactly. The HUD at the top right of the screen was telling me that I had to replace a car door, or rather add replacing a car door to my to-do list, and I didn't know exactly what it meant by that. Sure enough, I figured out after searching through the menus that I had to highlight the car door and then press triangle to add it to my to-do list, and the indicator to do that was not that obvious. I'm not saying I need a giant neon sign telling me where to click at all times, but when a game has menus that are this cluttered, I definitely need more guidance in the tutorial section. Of course, I did notice upon looking back at the footage that there was an indicator highlighted in a very small orange box, and while it's there, it's still very easy to miss, so I feel like the devs could add some way to make this a bit more obvious. My biggest concern before jumping into Pacific Drive was if the gameplay was going to be fun, because judging by the gameplay I've seen in the past, it did look like you could easily run into some frustrating moments when driving around this big clunky station wagon. And sure enough, there were plenty of those moments. And I understand why, because the game is aiming for realism. And naturally, when you're driving around a place with all kinds of weird anomalies that can't be explained with human words, it's gonna be hard. But I also still want that challenge to feel fun and rewarding, and I feel the game could do significantly better at easing new players into this gameplay style. For example, there was a moment where I immediately started exploring a zone, and I was instantly bombarded by enemies who damaged my vehicle. So I had to take time away from my objective to get these things off of my car, and not only that, look for resources to repair the damage they did to it. There was also another instance where a zone was being engulfed in some radioactive storm, and I was trying to drive away to the exit before dying. I was getting pretty close, but for reasons unbeknownst to me, even after looking over the footage, my car just spun out of control and I wound up dying, causing me to respawn back at the garage with a really banged up car and barely any materials to rebuild it with. Thankfully, there is a sentient trash can in the back of the garage that spawns some parts that you'll need, but not all of them. What really stung for me about this death was that I lost just about everything that I accumulated throughout that journey, causing me to start from scratch, and that's really hard to do when the car is already at low health and I only had enough resources to repair some of the damage. The only way to keep those resources is to come back to the garage and store them in its many lockers. However, getting back to the garage is not as simple as you might think, as it requires opening a portal to get back to it. And you'll open this portal after collecting a few of these devices called stable anchors that you'll put in your car's arc device. But opening that portal is a challenge in and of itself, as you have to be a certain distance away from a predetermined portal opening in order to turn it into some kind of challenge, because you have to get to that portal in a limited time, otherwise you'll be engulfed in another storm. As frustrated as I was by moments like these, I understand there is an audience for this type of game, where having realistic physics are part of the challenge, and if that sounds like your cup of tea, Pacific Drive might just be your kind of game, at least based on the 3.5-hour preview that I played of it. As frustrating as some moments were, there was something here that I really enjoyed. Just the concept of upgrading your car to the point where it could survive these outlandish conditions is something that I can get behind, even if I thought the gameplay experience itself could be tweaked a bit to better welcome newcomers into this unique survival game that's based entirely around your vehicle. I will say though, maybe I was having a tough time because this was fairly early on in the game, and I had yet to unlock the tools and blueprints needed to make driving through these sections more of a breeze, such as better armor or better tire traction, if such upgrades exist. Who knows, maybe I'll try out the final game when it comes out on February 22nd to see if I just need a little bit more time to understand the nature of this game. But let me know in the comments if you're excited for Pacific Drive, and until next time, bye bye.